All right, just a couple of questions I need to ask. In 1992, when your Conservative Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, went to Rio de Janeiro to commit Canadians to an agenda created by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity, did he return to Canada and task all of his MPs to go do town halls to explain to the people what it is he committed to? Did that ever happen? No. The exact opposite happened. They framed it as a conspiracy theory so that you wouldn't pay attention and so they could dismiss people like me. It's reality now. Did Stephen Harper task all of his MPs after he signed it in 2015? And prior to that, he made it law in this country with the Sustainability Act. And after he did that, did he task his MPs to go back to their constituents and tell them about what they've committed to and what law they created, making it binding in this country, where we're now compelled as a government in this country to report our progress in achieving the goals of sustainable development to an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity? Did they explain that to any of you? No, they didn't. In 2015, when Harper signed again Agenda 2030, September 27th, 2015, did he task all of his MPs to go back to their constituents and inform them of what they committed to? No, they didn't. And there's still people running around calling it a conspiracy theory, even though we all know it's reality. An agenda created again by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity, hell-bent on destroying Western civilization and everything that we cherish, and controlling everything that you do. Everything from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, they want to control it all through this agenda. Did any of them tell you about this? Did any of these MPs, these elected officials in Parliament, go back to the constituents and inform the people of what this represents, what the consequences to this, committing to this agenda, really are? Did they do that? No, they haven't. They framed it as conspiracy theory because of people like myself they need to dismiss. And when you talk about SOGI, it's completely connected. This agenda was first conceptualized in 1968 through funding by the Rockefellers, by the Rothschilds, by the Warburgs and the Schiffs, all the big bankers, because they want to centralize all control within the UN. Look what the World Health Organization is doing. They want to dictate to you health policy. And our politicians in this country, all of them, are on board with it, including the Conservative Party of Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada is the only party in this country that is committed to that agenda. And then they pass the baton on to the Liberals to implement it. That's how this all comes together. I encourage you to look at my pinned tweet, Dennis Meadows, founding member of the Club of Rome, and what he says on my pinned tweet, and what this all represents. All of this is about control. controlling all aspects of your life. That's what this agenda represents. They want control. They've ceded our sovereignty to, again, an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. And is there policy in the Conservative Party platform that denounces Agenda 2030? No. Is there policy in the Sask Party's policy package that denounces Agenda 2030? No. There's one party in Saskatchewan that has it in their policy to reject Agenda 2030. There's one federal party in Canada that has it in their policy to reject Agenda 2030, and that's the PPC. That's it. There is no other option. If you continue to support the only party that's ever committed us to this agenda, then you're setting our country up for enormous failure. That's going to be on you. This agenda, as I've said, is meant to control all aspects of your life and take individual rights and throw them out the window. That's what this agenda represents. It's hyper-centralization of control and power into the UN. And understand, when Pierre Poilievre denounces the World Economic Forum, understand this. When this agenda was first conceptualized in the late 60s, they tapped Klaus Schwab to create the World Economic Forum in 1971 as a support mechanism for the greater agenda. The World Economic Forum is not the pinnacle of this globalist agenda. The UN is, which is why they're attempting to consolidate power through the World Health Organization and through this agenda. That's where the power is going to lie. If we continue to allow these politicians to continue to cede our sovereignty to this unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. It's time to wake up. It's time to understand who's who in the zoo. None of these parties have denounced Agenda 2030 on a formal basis with party policy. None of them. And they won't. This is the loss of your rights, your freedoms, your prosperity, your liberty, your freedoms, rule of law. The corruption is running rampant because what they've done through the World Economic Forum, excuse me, is they've managed to co-opt multinational corporations who require capital to run their operations. In order to get their capital, they have to employ this ESG, environmental social governance. That's the only way they're going to get capital from the people like BlackRock. That's the corruption that we're seeing. And there isn't a party other than the Buffalo Party and the PPC and maybe the BC Conservatives that has the denouncement and rejection of Agenda 2030 built into their policy. and maybe the Keystone Party in Manitoba. We can hope. And when we talk about party policy in Saskatchewan, when we talk about the Buffalo Party, the reason I joined the Buffalo Party was because it's members driven. The leader and the board doesn't even vote on policy. They're not allowed to. It's in our Constitution. It's member driven. And when I saw that they reject Agenda 2030 in full, and they reject SOGI in full, I had no choice but to join the Buffalo Party, because it told me that the membership is very switched on in this province. They get it. Now, when, again, I go back to this point, did the Conservatives ever send and task their MPs to go back to their constituents and talk about Agenda 2030? No, they haven't. Neither has the Sask Party, and what the consequences to committing to that agenda really are. No, it's left to people like me, who I've been running town halls around the province for over 4 years, maybe longer. Not only around the province, but also touring the country, trying to explain to people what this agenda really means. So if you're looking for somebody to support, if you're looking for a political entity that has fully denounced Agenda 2030 and this hyper-centralization of power and control over your lives, every aspect of your lives, it's the PPC federally. It's the Buffalo Party provincially. We're the only ones. And there might be some provincial parties in other provinces that have that in their policy. Let's hope they get there. But that's it. People have to start to wrap their head around what this agenda really means. And it isn't conspiracy theory. It's reality. Trudeau talks about the SDGs all the time. Everything Trudeau, and the reason we hate Trudeau as much as we do, since he was elected in 2015, after Harper passed him the baton, everything he has done, everything he's implemented in this country is in compliance through the commitment to that Agenda 2030. All of it. Everything he's done. Which is why nobody likes him. And yet the Conservative Party does not have it in their policy to reject Agenda 2030 in full. Doesn't exist. They're still on board with the Paris Accords, which is also associated with Agenda 2030. This whole climate hoax is exactly what it is. It's a hoax. It's to drive power and control through fear and propaganda. That's what this is all about. So, act appropriately. Support the entities that are willing to reject this out of hand. We don't have any other choice. This is about politics. That's it. Ciao.